First of all, thank you so much for inviting me on your platform. It's a pleasure to join you again and have a conversation, be on the other side of the hot seat here. My name is Sarah. I go by the Sober Sherpa on Instagram. I live in Toronto, Canada, with my husband and our two puppies. We have a little one, a little Yorkie named Coco, and a big guy, a lab called Hank. We're avid travelers. We love exploring and trying new things. I have a real passion for adventure-based activities like hiking and any kind of board sports. I've worked in the corporate marketing field for 20 years, leading strategy for large Canadian retailers.
So talk
No,
to us about your drinking story and when you drank and why you drank and why you decided to quit.
absolutely. I started drinking pretty young, around 14 or 15 years old. I went to a boarding school in the Eastern Townships, Quebec. It was a tiny little town. I guess outside of the organized curricular activities, which there were lots of, there wasn't a whole lot else to do. And as kids do, it was maybe a little bit of an act of rebellion, but just a way to let loose. It very quickly became what I associated with having fun. Everything that we did outside of school revolved around how could we get away with drinking. It informed the university I chose. I actually ended up going to a university that David Letterman had in his top 10 party school lists. And so I definitely wanted to keep that social life going through university. It definitely informed the people I hung out with, the scenes that I gravitated towards, like rave culture was really big when I was in university. Those sort of late night, multiple day parties were really something that I gravitated towards. But I was always really motivated to be financially independent and successful. When I left university, I got a job and I was very focused on climbing the corporate ladder and making sure that I could live up to the sort of work hard, play hard lifestyle that I enjoyed. That carried on, and I was able to keep those two lives separate for the most part. I would say that the two wouldn't have recognized the other. So I never really overlapped those two areas of my life. But definitely over time, I think the negative consequences of my drinking started to pile up as they do. I would do and say embarrassing things. I didn't really have much of a filter. And of course, I really didn't have an off switch. My partying would go as others would allow it to. And of course, that kind of gets old, I think, for many as we grow older. But I always had that very successful career on the side to prove that I wasn't a complete screw up. So
Yeah, we do
carried on.
that, don't we? I think we're probably more ambitious than many people because even though we're not enjoying the alcohol, we think as long as everything works well, as long as the family's all right and we've got this good job, we're fine. We don't really have a problem.
Absolutely. I definitely hung on that for sure. I really didn't prioritize much else. I didn't prioritize relationships or finding someone to sit and settle down and have a family with. It really was work and party, party.
Yeah, I remember that as well. Well, what kind of age were you when you decided that maybe you'll ditch the booze and try alcohol free for a while?
Oh gosh, it was very long overdue. I think I always knew that alcohol affected me a bit differently than other people. And I certainly spent a really long time trying to manage the effects of alcohol, doing all the things, all the rules that we put in place, perpetually trying to figure out how to be a normal drinker and failing.
I just wish sometimes that it occurred to me to quit earlier because I just couldn't personally imagine my life without alcohol. So I
Yeah,
convinced myself I could control it. And that's why I kept trying and failing and trying and failing and moderating and the rules. And that was a decade, really. And it's depressing and exhausting because you think there's something wrong with you, really.
100%. You know that I definitely thought that there was something wrong with me because I could see that there were other people who could manage it, and why couldn't I? You also mentioned not really knowing anything else, and how could I possibly live a life where alcohol wasn't a part of it? So just desperately trying to figure that out. I spent a decade just like you trying to do that. My big wake up call happened in COVID. And it was when I started to see that potentially my excessive partying could impact my career. I definitely wish I could say that it was the worrying of my family or wanting to be healthier or all those things, but it really was this idea that if I kept going, I could potentially ruin the career I had built up over this time. And I really needed to protect that at all costs.
When it was COVID, were you working at home?
Yeah, I was
How
working
did
at
that
home.
work out? I know many people had the Zoom and their glass of wine.
Yeah, that's the thing. You start earlier and there was no real reason to finish the night. You could recover in bed if you needed to and not turn your camera on. And a lot of times my night would end because I had to go into work and go to a meeting. And when that wasn't there, there really was no reason to stop. So it definitely was a bit of a, gosh, this can go one of two ways. This is either going to make you or break you. Thankfully, I made the decision to end it once and for all. And it was perfect timing because there was no social activities going on to tempt me. All the other times I had tried to stop before would often get in the way of because something would come up that I'd want to participate in that would derail my attempts to stop.
So you used the COVID break to build up some sober muscle, really.
Yes, exactly. I absolutely needed that time to myself to really get to know who I was and what I really enjoyed doing and ask all the tough questions and work through some of those areas that I needed to let go. I harbored quite a bit of anger and resentment over the years, and those feelings would often come out when I'd be drinking. That was not a healthy way to process that. So finally managing a lot of those things and then moving forward and getting clear on who I wanted to be and how I wanted to spend my time was really instrumental in my recovery for sure.
And how did you manage to do it, Sarah? Have you got any tips to share?
I do say that's one thing about sobriety is there isn't a one size fits all by any means. But I think for me, I did need to enroll in a program. And thankfully, because it was COVID, I was able to do it online and it didn't interrupt my ability to keep working. So I would work all day on Zoom and then spend my evenings on Zoom in a program for 3 months. It was a 12-week program, very intensive, about 10 hours each week. Really nice mix of CBT and DBT and group therapy, which I really thought I wasn't going to enjoy and ended up being the most beneficial because I was able to look across the screen and see a bunch of people that looked exactly like me. I definitely needed that structure, I think, to keep myself accountable and also to spend the money. When you spend money on something, right, for me anyways, I wasn't going to put it to waste. I was at least going to give it a real shot this time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a real good point, isn't it? Because sometimes we offer free programs and people join for a couple of days, and sometimes they just drift off. And I'm sure there's something there about, oh, I didn't pay for this thing anyway, so I don't really have to do the work. So, yeah, you made a very interesting point.
Yeah, I also credit to a reading. I read a lot. This Naked Mind was a book that I read cover to cover twice in 48 hours. And there was a real pivotal switch in the way I was thinking, not just trying to be a normal drinker anymore, really realizing that actually isn't possible. So I loved the way that she debunked all the reasons we think that we're drinking and what it's actually doing to us. And educating myself that way was really helpful for me to just realize, you know what, alcohol and me don't go together. And it's not my fault. That's actually by design, and it affects some of us different than others. Once I realized that that wasn't my fault, but there was nothing I could do about it, it was time to just accept it and move on.
Well, exactly. What would you say were some of your limiting beliefs around alcohol?
Well, I certainly thought that I needed alcohol for a social aspect. I thought it was funnier. I thought it was more interesting. I thought that was really the only way that you could have fun. Once I realized that you're actually not as interesting and often repeating yourself or going on for too long or dominating conversations. I could relate to that, and I did see a bit of that in myself. But yeah, those were some of the big ones. And then the whole idea that so many of us are drinking because we're stressed or because we've had a hard day or rewarding ourselves is really something that I had to look in the mirror and be like, I'm making these situations worse. Every time I drink, that is when things would come out that I probably would have handled more maturely without. Then just like working through feelings versus trying to push them under the rug is a big part of it as well. You're really just prolonging the inevitable by drinking to manage any sort of stress.
Your marketing expertise, it must have been quite interesting for you to think about how we are marketed alcohol from a very young age, aren't we? They target us at every stage when you think about it, the teenagers and the young people. And then it's the mommy juice, and then it's
Yeah.
midlife, feel stressed, and they even carry on targeting you when you're retired.
It's everywhere. It really does contribute to this idea that we really don't think there's any way out of it. And how can we possibly live in a world that is so focused on drinking for every sort of occasion and emotion? How can we live in a world like that if we're not doing it too? It is quite refreshing to see that changing nowadays, though.
Yeah, one of our members, a guy, he was in marketing and he was given an alcohol account by one of his bosses. He looked at the elements and he was just in his early stages of sobriety and he was getting so much cognitive dissonance, they call it. So he went to his boss and he said, look, I can't do this because it's really important to me that I quit drinking. I've got some problems with it. So his boss managed to find him an account promoting alcohol-free drink. And he enjoyed that because it's not easy if you're asked to do something like that. And you're trying to change your mindset and then your work is around that. Of course, we've got the marketing and then we've got the peer pressure. And you say to your friends, oh, I'm going to quit drinking. And they go, are you crazy? Why would you do?
Exactly. I didn't know anybody at the time that wasn't drinking or had even attempted to stop drinking. This was definitely something that I was doing on my own. I didn't want anybody to know. So yeah, like I mentioned before, I absolutely credit COVID allowing me the time and space to get to a place where I could see it as a point of pride and not something that I was embarrassed about.
Yeah. So you came out of COVID as a non-drinker, really?
I did. It still did take me some time to really embrace my sobriety publicly. I absolutely loved everything about being sober and all the benefits. I certainly realized early, like I mentioned, that it just wasn't for me anymore and I couldn't do it. But I wasn't necessarily ready for it to define me at all. I actually didn't really want to tell anybody. I told close friends, but when we started to go back to work and we would have work functions, I would do my very best to try and put something in my glass that looked like it was alcohol, pretend
You
it
have to
was.
have the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then even when I did start sharing, it was more during COVID. I just got super healthy and I really enjoy the benefits of that. And so I don't think I'll ever go back, kind of thing. It was never really admitting that it became a problem to me. I still felt quite embarrassed by the fact that I had to manage that problem, not really appreciating that it was something that was out of my control.
I always think it's much easier to say to people that you don't know very well something like, oh, I've had a break from alcohol. I haven't had a drink for the last 3 months and I feel fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and the more that you can prove that you can still be the life of the party, or you're still having a great time. I absolutely wanted to prove by example that it was a life worth exploring versus spending so much time talking and potentially coming off preachy, or it can be
Yeah.
off-putting to some people who still want to be
Yeah.
drinking. And I very much wanted everyone to know you can drink around me.
So let's stay with the benefits for a moment, Sarah. Why don't you put on your marketing hat and sell sobriety to us? Why? Someone that's still drinking and they're not sure whether it's worth doing or not. What would you say to them? What are the benefits of alcohol-free life for you?
Gosh, There's so many benefits, right? The list goes on and on. But for me specifically, especially being somebody who did rack up quite a long list of negative consequences, I didn't quite realize the weight of the shame and embarrassment that I was carrying for all of those years, and the relief that I would feel knowing that I, didn't have to worry about another drunken catastrophe. So that was probably the biggest benefit for me early on, that I didn't realize quite how strong that was going to affect
Yeah.
me. I didn't realize how much I was constantly worrying
Yeah.
about what I was going to do, what I was going to say, how it was going to impact my poor mother, who were worried so much about me, or was this going to impact work? That was just a constant thing going on in my brain that I didn't realize how heavy it was.
That's why when we are sober, it's such a relief, isn't it? To free up that mental space to think about something more interesting.
Oh, you got it. You got it. So that was number one for me for sure. And then, of course, I had debilitating hangovers. So I loved this idea of waking up every day, feeling amazing, full of energy, ready to tackle the day, never having to worry that I was going to make plans and then have to cancel them because I wasn't feeling well enough to keep them. So this ability to just live life to its fullest every single day, never having to worry that I wasn't going to feel up to the day's activities. I love that. I love waking up feeling full of
Yeah.
life. That's an amazing benefit. I also married the love of my life, and that definitely wouldn't have happened if I
Mm.
didn't get sober. Prioritizing love and relationships is not something I did before. Like I said, I prioritized work and partying, and there really wasn't room for anything else. Thinking like a we for the first time in my life and not like an I, that had a big benefit for me too. So much more trust with my family members as well now. Prioritization of relationships and seeing them grow, and the friendships that I have now, they're so much deeper. I felt like I was connecting before when I was partying, but it really wasn't. Yeah, I think relationships was a big one for me.
We met, didn't we? Yeah, because you organized your epic virtual speakers event. So talk to us about that a little bit. Give us some background, because I don't really know why you did it and what the objective was. I know it was great, but talk to us a
Yeah.
little bit about it.
Oh my gosh, that was really fun. I noticed that there was a lot of stuff in the market that focused on how to get sober, which I think is very important and necessary. But I noticed that there was a bit of a gap in how to help people stay sober, and really showcasing examples of people who were living their most epic lives sober. It took me a long time to embrace my sober identity. And I think if there were more examples of people who were living their best lives and what's possible in sobriety, and how embracing your sober identity can open so many doors, and the connections that are possible, I just felt like there was a bit of a gap in the marketplace. So I wanted to reach out to a number of people in the sober space that I thought were great examples of people who had either conquered a bold challenge or built a thriving community, were reimagining the social scene, just had created these really remarkable careers from their sobriety, and talk with them and have them share their story and inspire and motivate other people to do the same. It was such a great experience, and I just loved speaking to all of you amazing sober trailblazers that were paving the way for so many of us, and hearing your stories and putting it out in such a way that I think really helped people to see sobriety not as something that they were giving up, that being sober isn't boring, that you aren't losing all your friends, that it does have this ability to be your greatest adventure, is something I'm super proud of and I think was really positively received.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I think we need realize that without alcohol, we're so much more likely to reach our potential in life, aren't we? We're going to
Absolutely.
become the best version of ourselves, because I think that society has stigmatized the alcoholic to such an extent that we'll think an alcoholic is a homeless man in the park with his bottle in the brown paper bag. So that's not me. I'm fine. I've got a good chocolate family. So we've got this kind of distance. But I say to people sometimes it's not about comparing yourself with the tramp in the park. It's about comparing yourself with the best version of yourself that you can be. And I think that's really what we need to do. So you had so many speakers, didn't you? Were there about 24 of us, I think, in the end?
There was about 25 speakers, and like I mentioned, all varying backgrounds. And I think it really allows people to see what's possible and ask themselves, what can I see myself doing? Could I join a run club? Should I hike Kilimanjaro? Oh, there isn't a community in my neighborhood. Could I start one? What are some new and different ways that I can be social? Also, for people who've been sober for a while and feeling that plateau a little bit about how can I make my life more meaningful, then there's all these ideas of how they might start a career using their sobriety as a starting point for that. Yeah, I really think it was able to appeal to a wide variety of individuals at different points in their sobriety. And your story specifically, I really loved because I think it also appeals to various different points in your life. And it's never too late to make the choice to start over. And yeah, I think it was really inspiring.
Yeah, so do I. And well done you. That must have taken quite some organization.
It's not something you could execute monthly. I think you're wondering if I would do it again, and I absolutely would. I think as we continue to see more and more people entering this space, we're going to see more and more examples and stories worth sharing. And there's always going to be inspiration needed because sometimes people don't even realize what it is that they can do until they see somebody else doing it, and it sparks something in them. Yeah, it is a lot to pull together, but it was so fun. I loved having these conversations, and I was still fairly new in my sobriety journey. I had only really started talking publicly about being sober a few months before. It was a real opportunity for me to get more comfortable speaking in a space and also meeting various people in the industry. And I definitely found it an opportunity for me to stretch as well.
Can people still buy, what did you call it, the Epic Pass or something if they want to watch the recordings? Are they still on sale?
They are still available, and there is a workbook that they can use as well. All 23 interviews are still available to watch at your own pace and follow along with the workbook, which includes various prompts and action-oriented next steps that can help them take.
I remember looking at your workbook. It was great. And how can people get it?
SoberAdventureCollective.com. It's still posted there. And then we'll also be offering it as a starter kit self-study tool on my other website, thesobersherpa.com.
Great. Imagine if someone's listening to this, Sarah, and they know they're drinking too much and they're worried about it and they haven't told anybody and they just don't know how to get started on this journey. What would you say to them?
Oh, probably if I just had to say one thing, it would be to join a community. It's really important, I think, to make sure that you are adding to your life so it doesn't become something you're kind of knuckling through and just focusing on removing this thing. There is just so much opportunity to add things to your life, whether it be a new passion or new friends or new purposeful, meaningful career. I do think it does help to be part of a community, hear your story and other people, not feel like you're quite on an island. It's really gives you the confidence to take the next step.
Yeah, I thought your comment was interesting about the program that you were doing, and you weren't keen on the group therapy side of it, as they called it, but in fact, you liked that the most. And we find that our Zoom cafes that we have on Saturday are so powerful, and newcomers there, and they're so nervous, and some of them get quite tearful. Then they send me messages afterwards saying, oh, that was such a relief to realize that it's not just me with this problem and that there's other people that not only have they done it, but they're encouraging other people to do it. Because at Tribe Sober now, we've got about 15 ambassadors, as we call them. And they're people that got sober with us. And they've just stayed with the community because they've loved the community so much. And now they're helping the new people to settle down and get sober. And it's so nice to see. And they're all volunteers. They give a lot of their time. They don't get anything financial from it. Bearing in mind how many there are and what a good job they do, I think it speaks for sobriety itself, because those people, they've got sober, they've become passionate about sobriety, a bit like I have, because there's so many benefits. And now they just want other people to discover it, really. So that's something lovely that I wasn't expecting would happen when I started a community. I thought people will join, they'll get sober and they'll go away again. But we've got this lovely group that have been with us for years and years.
I love that. I think your community is such an inspiration. I look up to it quite a bit. And certainly the end goal is to hope that you've instilled the skills and the love for sobriety that people want to pay it forward and take it into their own communities, or to help expand the community that they're part of. It is such meaningful work. There is just something about getting sober, especially when you're somebody that didn't think that it was possible or that life was just going to completely end, and then it doesn't, that you just want to share that with as many people as possible. To give your life meaning in that way just seems to be something that's common thread between a lot of people that follow this path.
Yeah. Yeah, I love meeting people in the recovery community, because not only have we had this struggle in common, which breaks the ice straight away, but we're all quite passionate about sobriety, or we wouldn't be in the recovery world helping other people.
It makes sense that we all become so passionate about it because we spent so many years fighting it.
Yeah. So talk to us about the Sober Adventure Collective. What do you do now? And how can you help people, and how can people contact you?
For sure. My business is really focused on this idea of adventure recovery. It's a healing through movement and connection. It was introduced to me by Carrie May. She has an adventure recovery company called Brave. I read an article where she was interviewed about 3 years into my sobriety, where I was still fairly quiet about it and not really thinking that the sober community was for me, because I really just thought it was a bunch of people sitting around in a dark basement talking about how hard it was to stay sober. That didn't appeal to me at all, because I loved being sober and I definitely didn't want to spend all my time talking about it. But she was bringing people together and taking them out on wilderness activities, hiking specifically, getting out in nature, and allowing that to be the place that encouraged connection. It really appealed to me. I was reading this article and I was like, this is exactly how I think I could open up or connect with other people in sobriety. She had a retreat coming up in Zion, Utah, and I went there. I was so nervous. I talked myself out of going a million times, but I did it. It was seconds within walking through that door that I just felt this connection with the other people that were there, this immediate acceptance. And then also thinking that I would probably just stay in the background a bit and let everyone else do the talking. But sure enough, I'd go out on these trails and start hiking, and it just offered up an opportunity to let my guard down. And I did just start sharing. I was blown away by the whole experience. So that's where I got the idea that I would eventually bring something like that back to Canada. And the more I got to know adventure recovery, I was pushing myself a little bit more and expanded beyond this healing through connection and movement to this idea of constantly challenging ourselves and pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone. And I do believe that is where you grow the most, and often surprise yourself of what you're capable of. I did need to find an alcohol stimulant replacement. I needed something that would continue to give me the high and the rush that I used to get.
The natural highs, didn't you?
The natural highs, exactly. So getting outdoors in nature and doing various things, pushing myself to see what I'm capable of, getting that satisfaction and pride of being able to do hard things is all a cornerstone of what I want to bring to my community and how I hope to help people So that's what the Sober Adventure Collective is all about.
So anything else you'd like to add that we haven't mentioned?
This is still something I'm doing to push myself outside of my comfort zone. I really thank you for the opportunity and encourage anybody out there who's a little more shy and reserved about coming out and owning their sobriety. Just keep pushing yourself one step at a time. It gets easier and easier the more that you do, and it absolutely makes a difference. And there's really nothing more rewarding than that. The idea that you can help somebody else achieve the same success and happiness that we all have in our sobriety. So that's what keeps me going. And thank you for being a part of my journey, Janet.